It's like a technical issue, isn't always the case. Unfortunately, my demos are all on my laptop, and my laptop won't talk to the projector. Blame Samsung, not me. So we're using my tablet for the presentation, and if you really want to see the demos close up, you're going to have to come around here, and I'll be fun, won't it? Anyway, what's the programming? What's the point? My name's Ben Lambert, and I'm currently Head of Development at Active Documents Limited up in North England. I've been there for nearly 10 years now, which for me is a huge amount of time in the job. I've got 20 plus years of development experience in the professional business area. I actually worked this out, it's actually 24 years since I wrote my first piece of business software when I was 15, which was on Cambridge computers that ran BBC Basic. I wrote a business application from BBC Basic, great fun. Really want to try it on the screen, it's 4 lines. I'm architect of our software as a solution feedback system that we're currently implementing and starting to launch. I've been working on this for about a year and a half now. Something that's completely out of our area of expertise. We're a document management company. Providing software as a service is something new. And going outside your comfort zone is something I'm talking about today, so that's actually a good example. I'm a proud software geek, and if you haven't spotted any of my t-shirts so far this week, you can probably say I'm a proud geek full stop. I'm passionate about programming. I started programming, I wrote my first program when I was 4 years old on a NASCOM 2 computer that my dad built. This is in 1978. Admittedly, it wasn't a very good program, and crashed. I went on, I've worked in the games industry a bit, released a couple of games for the Spectrum in the 80s, and then I went into business. I qualified as computing for industry, they called it. I'm a software engineer. So I have a lot of experience. What is practice programming? Practice programming is something I've been thinking on and off since I was at university. It's a long time. It started off with one of my lecturers at university said to me that he spent a lot of his own spare time practicing the art of programming. Now, can I just ask, how many of you here are programmers? You have the right confidence, fantastic. How many of you would class yourselves as a junior programmer still? A few. It's a fun place to be. How many of you are veterans of programming? 3. Fantastic. How many of you are software development managers now? 2. It's fun, isn't it? I'm software development, I get to keep my hands dirty as well. How many of you are pointy-headed bosses? No. Good. I mean, the right people. One last question. How many of you consider programming to be an art form? Thank you. So, this lecturer said he practiced his art of programming. And that's just like, so I've always considered programming art. Obviously it's engineering. I've actually trained a bit in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, as well as software. I see any form of engineering as an art form because you put passion, you put what you've got in yourself into it. You find yourself loving what you're doing, or you find yourself being a 9 to 5 and hating it every second. So, what is practice? That's my little one. Don't my French horn. Really big as him. I'm a musician. I'm a good musician. I'll admit that freely. I play lots of different instruments. So I thought an instrument is an example. If you're learning an instrument to be good, really, really good, is anyone? How many of you play instruments? How many of you are really good? Or good? How many of you think you might be okay? That's okay. You have 10,000 hours of practice to become professional musician. 10,000 hours, that's 4.5 years of solid practice. It's a lot. And once you get there, professional musicians spend hours practicing. Someone often said the difference between a good musician and an excellent musician is 3 to 4 hours practice a day. I managed 3 to 4 hours practice a year, much to my teacher's disgust. Talking on musicians, I do play the church organ bit. I'm looking at that out there. Wow. What is programming? As it says, if you don't know what programming is, then you're not the right conference for you. Programming can be looked at in the same way as music. It's an art form. You practice, you get better, you don't, you stagnate. Not so in music, if you don't practice, you get worse. I don't know if it's the same for programming. I suspect it's not. I suspect we're all fairly lucky this way. So, what is practice programming? This thing I've been thinking of for the last 20 years. It's all right. I wrote this, apologies if the name's not right, a structured approach to self-improvement in your programming style using repetitive tasks. Boring. It's interesting. It is boring. It sounds terribly boring. Repeat the repetitive tasks. I'm going to practice doing a for loop. This will be good. I will do a for loop, then I will do another for loop, then I will do another for loop, then I'll give up and go to the pub. Your repetitions don't have to be the same every time. But they are repetitions. You are practicing what you are doing to make yourself better. There are several different ways of doing this. They don't have to be, they don't have to be this boring way of doing things. So, you're already programmers. Why do you use practice? However good you are, you can still improve. I've been programming for, blimey, 35 years now. I would never class myself an excellent programmer. I'm maybe a good programmer, on the occasion it doesn't sound good. The rest of the time I'll just say I'm a programmer. This is because I always recognise there's more to learn. I can always improve what I'm doing. I can always make myself better. And I spend a lot of time training junior developers now. And I try to instill in this. There's always more to learn. From junior senior developers to the ultimate guru veteran, you can always learn more. You can always improve your art. If you get it perfect, then great, but there's always the next little thing to get perfect as well. A chance to expand your knowledge and learn new techniques. Well, why not? Practice, you don't have to practice the same thing every time. Why not go out and find a new way to do something you already do all the time? There might be a better way to do some code that you're writing. There's always different ways. Your knowledge can only keep on growing, and you can only keep on growing. Even if you learn a technique that's actually no use to you at this point, a year down the line, it might be actually some value. So keep on expanding your knowledge. It gives you a chance to change, a chance to play with other ways of doing things you already frequently do. It might be that you do everything using .NET threads. Fantastic, you love it. Then you see the task library comes along, but you're not using .NET 4, and I know quite a few companies that still use .NET 2, so they're really playing with thread pools, things like that. .NET 4 comes on, tasks go on, .NET 4.5 comes on, my tablet goes to sleep now. I'll travel to the rest of the force now. Got to love computers. apologies for this. Things are a little. But I'll keep on going even though you can't see the slides, and if you use I'll just wave my tablet around at you. A chance to play with other things, other ways of doing things. I said, don't like 4.5.1. 4.5 came out a way to sync, which actually I'm currently starting to play with now. So we've actually started using .NET 4, .NET 4.5, so 4.5, 4.5.1. What I do, it works, so I can start doing it more easily. It can be fun. No one's throwing anything at me, so that's good. Yes, practice program can be fun. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be boring. Go out and do something that's completely interesting. Go out, write a game. Yeah. Games programming is actually a very good way to learn programming. It might teach you a few bad habits of cutting corners if you go to a few code houses. I know, but it's hopefully not. It's a new way to. Find one of those little vacuum cleaner robots and reprogram it to take children around the room. Anything. Go out, write something new and something you've never done before. Teach yourself a new language while you're practicing. Admittedly, if you're a Visual Basic programmer, picking up Xcode and program Object-C is probably a blame mind. I was a Visual Basic programmer, now. Go out, find something that's going to excite you. Get enjoyment out of this. Really find that passion, because it's passion that can separate the really, I'm using good in a different way to earlier, the really sort of good committed programmers to the ones who aren't. So what is the point of practice programming? It's self-improvement, nothing else. By the way, if anyone wants to shout at me if that would be rubbish, heckle, anything like that, this is sort of expressing me, it's not two-way jobbing. It's to improve yourself, improve the way you work, maybe get some enjoyment out of it, get that passion back. If you have never had the passion, bring it into yourself. Really, this slide earlier, so just enjoy it. So I'm going to use an example that some of you will roll their eyes at, most of you, hopefully. FizzBuzz. Who knows what FizzBuzz is? FizzBuzz is a group word game designed for teaching division to children. Very, very simple. I've never met a child who actually enjoys it. Players take turns to count incrementally, reading from the screen, replacing any number divisible by 3 with the word fizz, any number divisible by 5 with the word buzz, and if divisible by both, fizz and buzz. So fizz buzz. Obviously, a computer can do this really, really easily. It's a few lines of code. Boring. But it doesn't have to be boring.
Sorry.
Try to do this one more time.
Stuart's actually gone out to buy the cable we need.
It's back, but not for long probably. But if it comes back properly, I'll actually show you the demos in 3 slides time, which would be improvements. Yeah, so this was boring. This is where I've got the first thing I need to actually show you. Oh, I've done it. The developer's first attempt, apologies for the resolution of my tablet, it's not as good. I gave this to an apprentice who started with us 18 months ago and said, this is the description of FizzBuzz, write the code. And this is just after he'd done a C# course. And he came up with code, it's 15 lines of code, for loop, output in a string. If it's divisible by 3, fizz, divisible by 5, buzz, divisible by 3 and 5, FizzBuzz, right line. Not rocket science, I'm sure you agree, very small code. I spent a couple of minutes writing it a couple of weeks ago, just for this. And I came with mine, it's not that different. I just write, I don't bother with the string generation, just write straight to console. And I recognise that you don't need to do the divisible by 3 and 5 because you can do it directly. So, yeah, that works. It's great. That is, I think, probably the purest one I can come up with quickly. It does the job in a short number of lines. So, Fizzbuzz is boring. 8 lines of code. Right. Oh, that was jumpy, I do apologise. It can be made sort of interesting, and this is where it gets a bit more problematic, because now I want to look at some examples which are on here. So, I'll skip that, and I'll come back to that later on. Hopefully we'll have the screen up and running. So, yeah, there are competitions out there to show off how good people can be programming Fizzbuzz. The smallest implementation of Fizzbuzz. I looked on XKCD for a couple of examples in the competition. It's a version of PHP, tiny, I sort of understand it. Version in Ruby, which I eventually sort of understand it. It's 1 line of code. It's elegant. It's ugly, but it's elegant. Yeah, these people, they're passionate about this. They're passionate about how small they can get the code, how quick they can get it. I won't talk about performance on this until we show my examples. So, practice makes perfect. You hear this all the time. Practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. Play the piano. Practice makes perfect. Practice did not make me perfect at the piano, and I failed my grade 6. I love that photo. Unfortunately, it's rotated on here. It shouldn't be. I actually took that downstairs. That is the carpet in the library downstairs. The cutout of where they put the hatch for the cables, and they put the carpet upside down. It's a really, really good way of practicing your craft matches. An expert breaks down the skills that are required to be an expert and focuses on improving those skills in chunks during practice or day-to-day activity. So, I want to learn to be the best programmer I can possibly be. I'm going to have to take that bit by bit. I want to be the best person to write a WCF application to talk to a server. I will take that in bits. I'll practice each bit individually. I won't just sort of try writing a huge thing all in one go. Another important feature of doing practice is continue practicing the skill, more challenging levels. The intention of improving yourself, mastering that skill. Again, gaming. I have a tendency, I do a lot of graphics manipulation. I'm a management specialist, so I take documents, I display boxes and whatever, I scale these documents as required, I process them, I OMR them. One of the best ways of actually getting your head around scaling, you can write a game. So if you write a game for a PC, if you write a game for a PC, that PC can have any size monitor. So you have to scale everything down to that. And nowadays there are ways of doing this automatically. They take the fun out of it. So it's a good way for me to practice how I'm going to implement scaling. I get to write a game at the same time, and I get to play the game for 5 minutes, think that's rubbish, and move on to the next thing. So, you're a programmer, you already spend more than 7 hours a day programming. Isn't that practice? Yes and no. When you're programming, you are practicing it to a point, but not necessarily practicing properly. We look at problems and we think, I know how to fix this, and do it. It's actually building it in with the thought process that I am practicing now. I'm going along, I am looking at I will find a new way of doing this thing. And then, so you're not just doing this, you are actually improving it. That line will make me hate it, I'm sure. Patterns can make things better and worse. I'm not saying patterns are bad, patterns are a great thing. I tend to use patterns, I don't necessarily think of them as patterns, but I look at my code and I've designed it in chunks that are patterns, interlinking together. It's great. When the Gang of Four originally wrote the first patterns book, I was still at university, and this being a UK university, I heard nothing about it, and I've heard about patterns until 5-6 years later. Since then, I've been using them more and more. Why not use those patterns as your chunks of expertise? So you say, I want to, the best person to write in this particular kind of factory pattern. You do it. You practice it when you reach your requirement to actually create factory in your code. You think, am I doing this the best way for my code? So, how do we split our expertise on chunks? Pick what you want to practice. Something that you do a lot. While you're programming, when you come to implement that, think, how else can I do this? See if you can find a better way of doing it. Don't spend too long on it because it will drop your efficiency. That's what Roy was saying earlier today. We have the slope with the plateaus and troughs. If you practice constantly, those troughs will be less deep. However, your improvements and your efficiency will go down in the process. It's all about slack time, as we mentioned with slack at the time. Hopefully you do things perfectly already, and then you won't need to find a better way. If you do, then it's something you now know. You might be able to use it any time in the future you need to. It might not be of any value at all, but it's getting your head around the fact that you are trying to improve yourself while you're programming. You're not doing 9 to 5 programming. You're enjoying what you're doing. You're trying to improve yourself. You're trying to be the best. You're trying to have passion about what you're doing. You can always take the thing you want to practice outside the code you're writing. In some ways, that can be safe for you, not suddenly messing around with new ways of doing things in code that will go into production. Because if it accidentally gets in production and takes out a server, the popularity will. An example of this, and I'll hopefully show the example when I can connect. I was trying to get my head around how to use tasks when tasks first became available. And I just couldn't get my head around a massive number of tasks, 100 tasks simultaneously, how to control when they came to completion. So I actually took Fizzbuzz, and I'll show this example in a bit, and I wrote Fizzbuzz in a massively parallel way. It spawns off 100 tasks. They will process quite nicely alongside each other. Then it puts them all together. It's a hugely inefficient way of doing Fizzbuzz. I'll say that now. Fizzbuzz takes twice as long as the example I showed on the screen earlier. But it proved out. I took that idea, I took it away, I put it in my production code, and this was code to process pages, I think 10,000 page PDF, to process them all to optical character read and output. I want to find a better way of actually doing it in parallel than using the built-in parallelism in the engine I was using. It failed miserably. I tried this several times. I went back to my Fizzbuzz and refined how it was working. I came up with ways of throttling and things like that. It actually works. It's still in position. It gave me, I think, a 400% performance increase, which I was very happy about. And it's still in production now. My customers are still using it. They're still happy with it. So yeah, take it outside. I always have a playground Visual Studio project. I'll just go in there, add an extra solution. I'll go in there, add an extra project, I'll play with the stuff in there, then I'll take it back into my main code. Practice makes imperfect. This is one. I first heard this on Tomorrow's World in the 80s. Again, I'm aging myself quite badly. And it's stuck in my head. First I used it as an excuse to try and get out of piano practice when I was a kid. But I've looked into this. There have been studies done in Germany and America into this with medical students, where in certain cases, too much practice can have the opposite effect to what's designed. And you first come against a problem that you have not seen before, you use your analytical skills to find a solution. When you come up against something similar, you're likely to look at it from the same point of view as the first time, potentially without analysing it as stringently as you should. Now, in the studies in Germany, they actually took medical students, they showed them a patient that had already been diagnosed, got them to diagnosis, and first time round, 80% of them got it right. Right, that's German med students for you. Then they took them to see another patient with very, very similar symptoms, a completely different disease, and got them to diagnose that as well. And students looked at the patient, looked at it, and 60% of them got it right. The other 20% who got it right before got it wrong at this time. Just assumed it was the same thing. You become complacent in programming. So, in whatever you're doing, what you're practicing. So, although not programming, not practicing can make you complacent, there is always the danger that practicing too much will have exactly the same effect. So let's find a happy medium in here. Right, we're not medical students. I help. So, separate practice projects. Practicing as part of your day-to-day development is going to make you less efficient. It always will. You can't help it as, you know, if I'm spending an extra 10 minutes every time I hit a problem, thinking about that problem, then that's 10 minutes I'm not ticky-tacking away. My boss goes, well, he doesn't anymore, you used to have boss. So yeah, your efficiency drops. So take that practice out of its own project, either as a learning exercise in work time, and some companies will allow their staff to do self-improvements, to train. It's a very cheap way of doing training. Train yourself in your own time, learn new ways of doing things, learn completely technologies, whatever. Go back and do things. Or in your own time, and admit, when I was younger, I was spending a lot of time programming in the night outside my general working hours. A lot of the time on my own stuff, I don't do that anymore. I have kids. They really stop you from doing stuff. But, you know, if you're committed, then you will spend some of your own time too. Lunch hours. I'm not saying spend every lunch hour doing it because you need a break from computers every now and again. But spend just half an hour of your lunch break just playing with something you've been working with already. That's where I've got more examples. This is the takes all the time. It's going to get past 5 o'clock, so I can say any questions and hopefully get fruit from that. I'll continue. Why should my employer allow me to practice programming in their time? Your efficiency is going to drop. Like I said, there's no way to avoid it. It will. I say probably. It will. If you're doing it as a separate project, then also you're not making room for you might be spending time budget towards self-improvement, or you might be sitting going, no one knows to be doing this. So why should my employer allow me to practice? Practicing will make you more efficient in the long run. You'll find a better way to do things, you'll learn to do things faster. if you've spent time learning new technologies and techniques, then when it comes to using those, you can go out and just go, yeah, no problem. Oh, my employer expects me to go out and spend time researching new technologies. I'm head of development, it's part of my job. I tell my junior programmers, go out, yeah, spend a bit of your time practicing, because I want to make you better. Junior programmers hate me, by the way, absolutely hate me. The really good thing with FISBOs, tell a junior programmer, tell a junior programmer to rewrite FISBOs using a switch statement. It's not possible, it's absolutely impossible. I've seen someone try and do this for 5 hours. It was cruel, it really wasted my resource time. You should look at people's resources, shouldn't you? Yeah, spending time practicing is self-training. It's of no cost. All the cost is your wages, really. And maybe a few books, a few bites on the internet. And it can really it'll help in the long run. Now, my aim is not today to turn you all into hugely passionate evangelists about practice programming. If I make some of you think, then that's great. And this is what I'm hoping you think about eating it back. You can help your company, you can help yourselves, you can maybe improve your options of moving on in the future, which isn't helping your company. So enjoy what you're doing, improve yourself, improve your company. Also, think about it. I love this one, bad practice programming. I have great fun with this sometimes. Normally nowadays, rather than giving it to myself, I do bad programming and give it to someone else to fix. And yeah, I might do that on a day-to-day work anyway, But write your practice code as badly as possible. Write a hugely horrible piece of code. This is only a suggestion, I'm not saying it's a good idea for everyone. Then use that as an exercise to practice debugging, practice refactoring, improve your day-to-day job. You spend 40% of your development time, on average, I think it is, debugging code. Test-driven design will pull that back, it'll improve it. You'll always spend time debugging your code. You'll always spend refactoring, optimizing, whatever's required. So this is a way of actually giving yourself a chance to help yourself doing that. Pick up some WinDBG, something like that, and learn to use that in debugging. It's a fantastic tool, but you give it to someone who's never seen it before, and they'll go, look, it's text, type, it doesn't mouse, it doesn't automatically do things. This is really weird. As I said, practice programming can be used as a training tool. I train junior programs. I'm only got one at the moment, and I need to think he hates me. But I find that giving them the idea of practice programming improves them faster than I don't. Sometimes they are going out there programming at night, and it's really quite good. It's nice, isn't it? Give them a simple piece of code, get them to write, try writing from scratch. FISBOs. Or something that you do quite a lot of. You change this code every now and again in your company. Give them that. So try rewriting this. And as they go through their training, their learning things, give them the same thing again. And so write it again and compare what you've done now to what you've done before. See how much you've improved. And see how you can actually utilise the ideas you've learned in a concrete way in your code. You can give this to more senior developers as well. I tend to trust anyone who's not a junior to teach them. I don't trust those juniors, to be fair. Don't trust apprentices, but trust juniors. 60-year-old guys from Middlesbrough are not necessarily the best programmers when they first start. I did learn that. So, if you're a head of development or a senior programmer, if you have responsibility towards training people who are under you but aren't necessarily juniors, encourage them to practice programming. Encourage them to do these things, to train themselves. I'm not running out of slides here. And the screen. Obviously, pair programming is advocated massively in the agile world. My company's actually too small to be 100% agile. We haven't come to other teams large enough. We've always done things in an agile manner. We're called prototyping at first. But pair programming, if you practice as a pair, massively efficient. If somebody got two people who aren't working at their full rate, and pair programming, although it does improve your efficiency because your code has less bugs in it, etc., if you've got two people both thinking about new ways of doing things, that efficiency improvement is lost. But if you're forming a new pair, I found that giving them something to practice, just half a day, something that they both already know, getting them to practice that together will actually sort of help to gel that team together. And obviously if there are a pair of people who don't necessarily get on, you get to go as a team. If you get two people who are apple and pear, apple and orange, get them to try and work together on something high importance, they will not necessarily get on that well. If you get them to do something simple to start off with, run that past them, get them to enjoy, maybe get a bit of enjoyment, maybe learn to work together a bit better, then they can really improve them as they go on. And now I've run out of slides, my examples take.
I'll go and chase Stuart.
Yeah.
I did send him out to ask him to go and draft them.
Yeah.
Very good.
There's only going to go for a few days. It's how can I demonstrate this beforehand? Under the plan.
Sorry,
Just run out of slides.
tell me that's just
So, any questions, any comments before I do the project?
How do you decide what practice?
It's interesting. Like I said, it's interesting. Day-to-day practice and live programming. You say something like, I don't believe I'm as good as I could be in using the .NET tasks library, producing large-scale factories to do things. I'm going to practice that. When I come to using it, if necessary, I'll go and look at better ways of doing things before I implement it. Because I think the way I've done it in the past is less efficient. Blah, blah, blah. If it's in your own stuff outside, it's outside some day-to-day programming, then run everything. There's a possibility to go out and pick a few things that you want to practice and something you can possibly practice them with. Again, things that you think you're not good enough at. And then go out and find yourself a project that you want to work out. If it's in your own time, you can go write a game, do whatever you want. So I've got an example.
There is a trip hazard there, sorry. I'll try and map that down for you.
And later on, ladies and gentlemen, you get to see the red-headed Geordie fall over and break his nose. very good. Start with FizzBuzz. Obviously, as a FizzBuzz is very small code, hugely complex. That's the version I showed earlier, my junior account. I need my keyboard and think that through. You can see that? That's the version that I gave to my junior developer. If I know it, what do you expect to see? FizzBuzz. It's pretty much what you would hope to see for FizzBuzz application. There's my version. Unless you really don't want me to run it, I'll just it's got the same answer. It's like better formatting possibly. But there are more interesting ways of doing it. This version is from Stack Overflow. Hugely over-engineered version. I love this. Yeah. Little tuple with all your a list of tuples of your combinations, and then search through for combinations that match it and output it then joining. That's fantastic, and I don't know if it's more efficient or not. It's not as elegant, but that's great.
It's extendable.
Pardon?
It's extendable.
Yeah, it's very extendable, yes. FizzBuzz pop. Next one. If I run it, again, that's output. Exactly what you expect from FizzBuzz. How about this one? Do a link. Again, this came from Stack Overflow. My link, although I can use link and do quite a lot, my link probably wasn't. That's this when I found this. That's finding a range, going through that, selecting, outputting the correct values. It's actually less lines of code than mine, which this is the version I was talking about, the multi-threaded version. Okay, I called the Stack Overflow version over-engineered. And that was, I think mine is probably more. So, I hold a dictionary and a list of the items that have been processed, a list of the tasks overhead. I then run through the numbers, and for each one I create a new task and start it. And each one does what FizzBuzz would do anyway. And then wait for them all to finish, and then I go through another loop, because efficiency isn't that important, is it? And I put them in the correct order. I did that for a specific reason. It helps teach people to learn. All the code that came from this tiny, simple little piece of code is still in use. It still works really well. And there's the technical interview version. Good, isn't it? Yes, I sat and I copied and pasted 100 lines of text. Things we do for our art. You hear stories about interviewers using FizzBuzz as an example, as a technical interview question. Can you write us FizzBuzz, please? And you hear of graduates doing this. I've got it, of all the implementations I've got here, that's the fastest. That's bang, it's done. Yes. Bam. Who thinks that's elegant? The other thing here I need to talk about is examples of what I do for my practice program. I'm not saying you should go out and do these, because everyone does their own thing. Actually, this wallpaper here is one of the things I do. That's programming generated every 2 minutes. This is not the 12th iteration of the software I've got, so it's getting more advanced every time. That's really doesn't want to work there. That's where I grew up. You see my old house. Is that my blog there? So, yeah. It's a random photo from my family pictures, 3 little monsters, and a picture I quite like. It's the company logo on there because it's a company laptop, which should probably look professional. The next situation, which I'm starting to work on now, actually is replacing that with the clock. Again, with the company logo. The clock every 2 minutes, I just go to the desktop, see the timers. But I'm having to drag it down and get the taskbar and read that. It's painful. Another thing I've written a lot of times in a lot of different languages. I've done this in BBC Basic, which was pointless because you can't hold dictionaries required. Java, JavaScript, C, C++, C#. It's something I do every time I try to teach myself a new language. It is Scrabble, helping application. For those of you who want to cheat at Scrabble, I'll give you a hint. If you're playing Scrabble on the board, having a laptop and typing is a good hint that you might just be cheating. So, Scrabble helper, it's using the SoundClouds database, which is a database of all the international English words. So don't use it against Americans playing Scrabble. It loads the dictionary really slowly. This is the version before I started playing this. This has been learned to play with Visual Studio 2008. It's not a pretty application in any way. I know a few people who are using this to cheat at Scrabble online, which I find hilarious. You can't play Scrabble without cheating. You can find anagrams from the letters you've got, you can find words that mess at the end of things. You can find bingos and Scrabble, big points. And just to prove that I do actually practice what I preach, I've started rewriting it in .NET. .NET 4.5.1, Visual Studio 2013. I haven't exactly got far, that's a little word list. It didn't pause. If I click on the word list tab, it'll go berserk and take ages because I'm trying to cram 28,000 words into the list box, which .NET doesn't like for some apparent reason. I don't think they'll offer it. No, I am actually, in my own time, writing a new version of this. Because it's a good way. I'm teaching myself that one because I want to learn to use the sync and await. I've never really had the chance to do .NET 4.5.1 stuff because work-wise we've always been .NET 2 and .NET 4. Nothing since. Recent project, I've forced .NET 4.5.1 down the line. Great fun. I've got some users on XP who aren't happy with this. They're paid by us rather than us paying them, so rather than paying us, so I don't actually care. So I'm using this to teach myself how to do sync and await better. I'll try and do a few other things when I'm doing it. I might take it and try teaching myself new UI technology. You never know. It's one of my thoughts. I said games. People, I say go out and write a game. I love games writing. I'll never ever advise anyone to work in the games industry it's hell. I did a stint at a developer in Sheffield, I won't say their name. And although I made a lot of good friends there, the stress levels when you're working in business seem very, very, very low. So I play around, I like games, I teach myself new technology when they come out for writing games. I've done stuff in Java, JavaScript, .NET, whatever. One game that I always write, which is very, the Northeast is gone. A very simple game, nothing massive. I did this in an hour lunch break. There's proof that it can be done without anything else. I did last year. I have no control over the thing. I was teaching myself XNA at the time, Microsoft technology, which Microsoft is now. No problem. Hey, I love my sound effects. Nothing exactly advanced. It was more to teach myself, again, scaling. How to do various graphic things, how to make it smooth, how to catch a mouse in XNA, which isn't exactly, I can't use in business. I have used XNA in a business application. I'll say that for displaying large numbers of documents very, very quickly in an application. I'll be saying all of that. So, die. So, or if you've done that sort of thing and you're on a bit of a chance to go out and write again. There are open source games projects out there, people writing games. Or try doing something, try something a bit more advanced. It might make the next Angry Birds and make a fortune. Don't make Flappy Bird, please do not make Flappy Bird. Or how about, has anyone come across this? 2048? The most addictive game on the planet at the moment. Simple, all you do is try and get it to calculate. I've spoken to a few people who are practicing by trying to write this in different languages, different things, different .NET frameworks, different JavaScript frameworks, trying to get this to work. It's not rocket science, it's quite interesting how it works, but and if I don't stop, I'm going to sit and play it for hours, and Jay will come and hurt me. It's simple. It teaches you a lot about HTML5. This is the one I quite like the implementation of. I think this might be HTML5. I personally argue about, I can't talk much about one of the games I released in the 80s. I've been gently rewriting that over the last few years. I can't demo it, I can't speak much about it because it's currently in the owners of it, because I sold the rights to the company who published it, are in great arguments with someone who just stuck it into a Windows 8 application. So I can't really speak much about it, but I do that. There are other things I do. Demo effects, there's this thing, especially in the 90s, where people would write demos. They're basically game graphics effects, but all sort of running through, trying to get this code as small as possible. And I always like these because they're a way of doing something quite complex in a simple way of coding it. And one I use quite a lot is the fire effect, or programmatically generated fire from the bottom of the screen. I will take this and I'll try it in a different graphical environment. It's working. So I wrote this in DevWeek 2012 during an HTML5 introduction workshop. I sat there and I wrote this. HTML5, the first bit of HTML5 canvas work I did. I use the canvas quite a lot now, so it did help me quite a lot. I got my head around the idea of how the canvas works, how you can do swapping quickly on the canvas. And it also taught me a lot of the caveats you get work with the canvas. In Chrome, you can only have one canvas on with active pattern equal at the time, so swapping gets tricky. Who wants to see what it looks like in Internet Explorer? When I wrote this, we tried it in IE, and it went, because IE implements floating point, it doesn't implement floating point calculations properly. So it was sent off, we actually sent this off to Microsoft, the IE team at Microsoft, and said, you can't do a lot of stuff that you can do in the other browsers. Do you want to see how we improved it? Like that. That wasn't supposed to happen. Okay.
You've not got compatibility mode or something like that. Compatibility mode in IE?
Oh, it could be, yes.
Hey, that one.
There you go. You don't go. There you go. So that's IE11. They've really done a good job of fixing it, haven't they? It's actually worse than it was in IE9. Well, so I have a few pieces of software, so pieces of code that I will go back to frequently. Some of the large ones like this, other ones are tiny things. I said I'll use FizzBuzz as a way of getting myself around something if I need to work out it. If I need to get my head around a particular way of recursing, I'll pull out a piece of recursive code I've done in the past and I'll do it again. Hopefully I'll find a fun way of doing it. Recursion is not necessarily fun. So I'll go back to any questions. You were asking how you choose what to practice. It's introspection. Look at yourself and say, you have to be brutally honest with yourself. I don't think I'm very good at X. Take that. Right? Yeah. Play with it. And as I said, in your normal hours as work or outside hours, whatever, try to push yourself that little bit further. Challenge yourself with it, which is what the whole writing a game thing or whatever is. You're challenging yourself to improve the way you do it. Recursion, if you're in games environment, recursion can be used for artificial intelligence. FizzBuzz is not a good example. But I use recursion quite a lot. Even that game, that simple tiny game I use now, uses quite a lot of recursion, and I've revisited that the way it recursively goes through the hierarchy of objects on screen every time I've done it. And I think I've improved it over the years. I've done quite a lot of work with AI over the last few years, and then branching where you're processing is using fuzzy logic. It can all help you improve. It's really challenging yourself, really pushing things as far as you can, and you can really help. Right. Any other questions?
There's I don't know if anyone's heard of a company called Inner Workings, but it's a kind of like an add-on for Visual Studio, which is for training, which is for practicing. It's quite academic, so.
I've had to move it. So.
Yeah, so are there any other kind of tools like that that you know of that I might know of that might be good for kind of learning .NET?
Not really. It's more. I tend not to use tools myself for this sort of thing. Inner Workings is the one I have played with a bit. I was quite impressed with the way it works. There are other add-ins. I know. There's a couple of open source projects. So if you give me your email, I'll send you the information on it. I'll get back to the office. So I've got the information there. Unfortunately, I didn't anticipate that question. I do apologise. There are tools out there, but in my opinion, they don't necessarily help because it's more you selfishly challenging than the tool. And they teach you to do things practice things in a very specific way, and not necessarily open your mind to every possibility of how you can do this. Yeah, I'll send you the details maybe to this next week. Anyone else?
You said you got kids now. I also have this problem as well. So I find it difficult to find time. So how do you find time to practice this stuff now?
Well, when I had little kids, it was quite easy. It was I had a laptop on one hand and a screen baby on the other. Nowadays, my social life hasn't recovered from the last 3 years ago. So, I personally, I do actually set time aside. I talked to my wife's got a social life. She goes out, and I'm left looking after the kids anyway. So I'll spend some of that time. Whatever I need to do, I'll actually sit in my program. I'll have fun. I'll write again. I'll work on even stuff like that. Obviously, I do quite a lot of my own actual work in these hours as well. I think I'm working with students for 55 hours a week anyway. So I'm sad. So yeah, it's finding the balance. When kids are little, in some ways it's easier. When they're getting older and they actually start going to bed properly, I get 5 hours on Thursday nights. I can do 6 hours. So
5 hours is like way longer than me.
how old are you?
It's about 15 months.
It'll improve. Really, it does improve. Then you have another one, I think. Any other questions? My aim was to finish at about 1:15 today. So that you can all get down for your drinks before they all went. So I'm not doing too bad on that one, I guess. So if there's no other questions, that's my email address and my Twitter.